Julian Alvarez has put Atletico Madrid under pressure, and Europe is circling. Who controls this now? Tottenham want Cody Gakpo, Lucas Bervgall wants first-team football, and Manchester City are closing in on Enzo Maresca. But the first crack is Atletico Madrid and Julian Alvarez. We start with the headline that can bend the forward market. When a 26-year-old Argentina forward tells Atletico Madrid he wants to leave, the room gets expensive very quickly. Julian Alvarez tells Atletico Madrid he wants to leave amid transfer interest. The dramatic part is not simply that Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Paris Saint-Germain are linked. That is the predictable glamour list. The real issue is leverage. Once Julian Alvarez signals he wants out, Atletico Madrid must decide whether resistance protects value or creates a long summer of public tension. This is not done yet, and interest is not the same as signed and announced. The Guardian reports that Julian Alvarez has told people at Atletico Madrid he wants to leave to fulfill a dream, with Barcelona, Real Madrid, and PSG all reported as interested. So let us be clear on this. The reporting we have says he wants to leave Atletico Madrid. It does not say a deal is agreed. It does not put him back at Manchester City. It does not turn transfer interest into a presentation video with a scarf above his head. That detail matters because Atletico are now in a classic danger zone. If they cash in too early, supporters will ask why a major forward was allowed to push the door open. If they dig in too hard, they risk turning one private message into a public standoff where every missed chance, every substitution, and every training ground photo gets treated like evidence in a courtroom. Football fans love body language analysis when the transfer window is open. Half the internet suddenly becomes a detective with a zoom button. Barcelona would bring the romance angle, Real Madrid would bring the power angle, and PSG would bring the financial angle. But Atletico's decision may be the most important part of the story. A player saying he wants to leave changes the temperature, not the legal reality. The contract still matters, the fee still matters, and Atletico still have to decide whether this becomes a controlled sale or a summer-long test of authority. Now to Tottenham, because Spurs are being pulled into one of those Premier League links that sounds simple until you ask the first serious question. Why would Liverpool make this easy? Tottenham linked with move for Liverpool forward Cody Gakpo. The overhyped part is the temptation to treat a link as a negotiation. What matters more is whether Liverpool would even want to strengthen a domestic rival with a Premier League proven forward. Tottenham benefit from being seen as ambitious, but ambition on a rumor page is cheaper than convincing Liverpool to sell. ESPN's transfer rumors item says Tottenham are eyeing Liverpool forward Cody Gakpo. That is the wording to hold on to, eyeing. The available evidence does not report a Tottenham bid, does not report a fee, and does not say Gakpo has left Liverpool. This is still interest, not movement through the door. For Spurs, the logic is easy to understand. A proven Premier League attacker would make sense in a rebuild, especially if the club wants more flexibility across the front line. Gakpo has played in the league, understands the tempo, and would not be some mystery box signing from a highlight reel where every defender appears to be running through wet cement. The complication is Liverpool. Selling useful attackers inside the same league is never just a football decision. It becomes a message. If Liverpool even entertained it, supporters would want to know what the succession plan looks like and why Tottenham are being allowed anywhere near a player who can help them directly. Until there is a bid, this story is a signal, not a sale. And while Tottenham are linked with incoming firepower, one of their own young midfielders is now part of an exit conversation. That is how quickly a rebuild can become a traffic jam. Lucas Bervgall reportedly asks to leave Tottenham in search of first-team football. This is not just a young player tantrum story, it is a pathway story. Lucas Bervgall is currently at Tottenham Hotspur, and if he cannot see regular first-team football there, the club has a real development decision to make. Supporters are right to be split because keeping him and letting him leave both carry risk. The transfer feed headline says Lucas Bervgall has asked to leave Tottenham in search of first-team football. The current club context matters. Bervgall is a Tottenham Hotspur midfielder, and the evidence gives the reported reason for the request, but it does not give a destination, and it does not say Tottenham Hotspur have sold him. A request, if reported accurately, opens a conversation. It does not close a transfer. Look, young midfielders do not develop properly by appearing every few weeks, collecting applause for potential, and then disappearing back into the waiting room. They need rhythm, mistakes, responsibility, and matches where the result actually hurts. If Tottenham Hotspur cannot offer that, a loan or exit conversation becomes less dramatic and more practical. But Spurs also have to be careful. Letting a talented midfielder go too easily can look foolish later, especially if the fan base already believes the club has mishandled development pathways in the past. Keeping him without a real role is not clever either. That is just placing a player in storage and pretending the dust is part of the plan. From player pathways to the biggest dugout pathway in Europe. Manchester City are reported to be moving toward Enzo Maresca, and that one carries serious symbolic weight. Manchester City close in on appointing Enzo Maresca as manager. The headline is big, but the hidden argument is continuity versus shock therapy. Enzo Maresca is currently the Chelsea manager, and Manchester City appear to be leaning toward a coach with existing City connections rather than tearing up the model after Pep Guardiola. That can be sensible, but sensible is not the same as safe when the job is replacing an era. BBC Sport says Manchester City are closing in on Maresca's appointment, while Sky describes him as close to becoming Manchester City's new head coach on a 3-year deal. The reporting also points to his previous City connections, which helps explain why this move would feel logical from the club side. But again, this is not officially confirmed in the evidence we have, and Maresca's current club context is Chelsea. The appeal is obvious. City know the value of system memory. A coach who understands the environment, the standards, and the way the club thinks gives them a route that looks controlled. After Guardiola, the temptation is to avoid a wild philosophical reset. Nobody at City wants the post-Pep era to look like someone unplugged the machine and then started asking where the power button is. The risk is just as obvious. Familiarity can become comfort. A coach can know the building and still have to command the dressing room, win tactical battles, and deal with the brutal comparison that follows Guardiola's shadow into every press conference. A 3-year deal, if it lands as reported, would not just appoint a manager, it would define the first chapter of City's succession plan. City's future is not only about the dugout, it is also about the midfielder who makes the whole structure look less human. Rodri contract talks with Manchester City reportedly put on hold. This is exactly the kind of contract story that gets exaggerated if people skip the wording. Talks being put on hold is not the same as Rodri rejecting Manchester City or asking to leave. Still, City fans are anxious for a reason because Rodri is not just a good player, he is a structural piece. Yahoo Sports' candidate title says Fabrizio Romano explained why contract talks between Manchester City and Rodri have been put on hold. That is the story we can responsibly discuss. The evidence does not say Rodri has rejected a deal, does not say he is leaving Manchester City, and does not report a transfer bid. Look, with some players, contract delays feel like routine paperwork. With Rodri, they feel louder because his role is so central. He is the player who turns chaos into shape, slows panic into possession, and gives City's attacking players permission to be brave because the space behind them is not being guarded by a coin toss. When a midfielder is that important, even a pause in talks becomes a mood swing for the fan base. City do not need panic, but they do need clarity. If Maresca is indeed being lined up as part of a new managerial phase, then Rodri's long-term future becomes even more important. A succession plan without the central midfielder who stabilizes everything would be like buying expensive doors for a house with no foundations. Away from the transfer market, Algeria produced the kind of comeback that turns one nation's survival into another nation's heartbreak. Jordan's debut World Cup story has reached a brutal early stop. Algeria fight back to beat Jordan and end debutants' World Cup run. The scoreline says Algeria won 2-1, but the story is sharper than that. Jordan's debut World Cup run, ending with a match to spare, gives this result emotional weight beyond the table. Algeria did not win comfortably. They had to turn the game around in the second half. Algeria came from behind to beat Jordan 2-1 at the World Cup, with second-half goals changing the match. The result knocked debutants Jordan out with a match to spare and kept Algeria's knockout hopes alive. That is a hard ending for Jordan because historic first tournaments often ask for two things at once: pride and punishment. The neutral reaction makes sense. Jordan had sympathy because debutants bring a different kind of energy to a World Cup. Every tackle feels like a national announcement, every counterattack feels like a chance to bend the script. But Algeria showed the colder tournament trait, resilience, when the match starts to slip away. Put it this way, comeback wins are not just about goals, they are about nerve. Algeria had to deal with the pressure of chasing the game, then find the moments that changed it. Jordan leave the race earlier than they wanted, while Algeria moved forward with hope still attached to the final group calculations. Meanwhile, Erling Haaland is doing the very annoying thing great strikers do at major tournaments. He is turning tight games into personal evidence. Haaland double sends Norway into World Cup last 32. Norway's 3-2 win over Senegal was not a gentle stroll into the knockout stage. Haaland scoring twice in the second half gives the Golden Boot conversation real fuel, not just social media noise. The important caution is that the evidence sends Norway through. It does not separately confirm Senegal's elimination. Norway beat Senegal 3-2, and Haaland scored a second-half double to send Norway into the World Cup last 32. That is the clean fact. A 5-goal match, a striker taking over after halftime, and a national team moving into the knockouts with its biggest weapon doing exactly what the poster promised. Haaland's tournament momentum matters because knockout football loves ruthless finishers. You can have the prettier build-up, the better possession spells, the more artistic midfield triangles, and then Haaland appears at the back post like an unpaid bill. The match ends, the graphics change, and everyone pretends they were calm. Fans pushing him as an early Golden Boot favorite are not reaching too far after a second-half double. The caveat is simple. Tournament scoring races can change fast, especially when fixtures tighten and opponents become more conservative. But Norway now have the most useful thing a knockout side can carry: belief that one chance may be enough if it falls to the right Haaland surface. France had to deal with a very different kind of disruption. Not tactical chaos, not dressing room drama, but a 2-hour weather delay in Philadelphia. Mbappe double fires France into World Cup last 32 after weather-hit win over Iraq. France beating Iraq 3-0 is convincing, but the weather delay is not a footnote. A 2-hour interruption can wreck routines, warm-ups, concentration, and match rhythm. Kylian Mbappe scoring twice after that disruption says plenty about France's ability to reset under strange conditions. France beat Iraq 3-0 and booked a place in the World Cup last 32 with a game to spare. Kylian Mbappe scored twice and the match was interrupted by a 2-hour weather delay in Philadelphia. So no, this was not just a normal night where France turned up, scored, and went home without turbulence. Weather delays are strange beasts. Players cool down, staff rethink timings, substitutes wait, routines get broken, and the match becomes a mental test before it becomes a football test again. Some teams return sluggish, some return irritated, and some look like they spent the delay remembering they are France. Mbappe's double matters because elite players are often measured by how quickly they re-enter the game after disruption. France did not need their final group match to qualify after this result, which changes their tournament management immediately. Minutes, rotation, fitness, and rhythm now become choices rather than emergencies. Now to England, where the attack has produced excitement, but Thomas Tuchel is staring at the other side of the pitch. That is usually where tournaments start issuing invoices. Tuchel urges England defensive improvement before Ghana test. The lazy version of this story is to say Tuchel is unhappy with England. The sharper reading is that he likes the attacking freedom but wants the defensive structure to stop inviting trouble. Against Ghana, the balance between expression and control becomes the real test. Thomas Tuchel says England must improve their defensive structure after a wake-up call against Croatia. The Guardian reports that he said England dropped too deep, while Sky reports that he has tried not to disturb his forwards and has given the attackers freedom on the pitch. England beat Croatia in their opener, so this is not a crisis briefing. It is a warning before the problem becomes louder. Here is the important bit. Tuchel is not presenting the attack as the issue. He is not trying to overcoach the forwards into beige football. The concern is what happens when the ball is lost. The backline retreats, and England start defending closer to their own goal than they would like. That can make even a talented side look like it is politely escorting opponents toward the penalty area. Ghana are the next test, and England have not beaten them in this story because the match has not been played. Fans are split for a reason. Some want the attacking freedom left alone, because nothing kills joy faster than tactical handbrake football. Others worry that tournament knockout rounds punish defensive softness with absolutely no interest in how entertaining the first half looked. Scotland face one of the most dangerous psychological traps in tournament football. Not needing to win can sound comforting until the whistle blows and Brazil are the team asking the questions. Scotland warned against playing for a draw or narrow defeat against Brazil. The scenario is tempting, because a draw or narrow defeat may be enough for Scotland to qualify. The danger is that playing for a calculation can distort a team's instincts from the first minute. Against Brazil, protecting goal difference is not a tactic by itself, it is a stress position. BBC analysis says Scotland may be able to qualify with a draw or even a narrow defeat against Brazil. But the same framing warns how difficult it is to play a game a team does not need to win. That distinction matters. Scotland are not already qualified, and a defeat is not automatically sufficient. This is where tournament football gets cruel. Tell a team a draw might be enough and you can accidentally invite passivity. Tell them a narrow defeat might still work and suddenly every clearance feels like a negotiation with destiny. The scoreboard, the group table, the other match, the goal difference, all of it starts living inside the players' heads. Against Brazil, that can become dangerous very quickly. If Scotland sit too deep too early, Brazil get territory, rhythm, and repeated chances to turn one goal into two. If Scotland attack recklessly, they risk opening the game into exactly the kind of space Brazil enjoy. The tactical question is not whether Scotland should be brave or cautious, it is whether they can manage the match without letting the qualification scenario manage them. Back to the rumor market, and Tottenham are not just being handed one name today. Paper Talk has Spurs chasing Marcus Rashford and Sandro Tonali, which is exactly the kind of headline that makes a fan base refresh until the thumb files a complaint. Paper Talk. Spurs chasing Marcus Rashford and Sandro Tonali in transfer market. This is a big-name double hit, but the source status matters here. The reporting we have frames this as paper talk, not as confirmed bids, agreed fees, or completed deals. Rashford and Tonali are famous enough to move the mood, but famous names do not automatically solve squad structure. The headline from Sky Sports' Paper Talk says Spurs are chasing Marcus Rashford and Sandro Tonali in the transfer market. So let us be clear on this. That is not the same as signed and announced. The evidence we have does not provide a bid, a price, a medical date, or a club statement. It gives us the market noise, and market noise can be useful, but only if we do not confuse volume with proof. For Tottenham, the attraction is obvious on the surface. Rashford brings attacking name value and Premier League recognition. Tonali brings midfield weight and a different kind of profile. But the sharper question is fit, not fame. If Spurs are chasing two major names at once, supporters should ask what the squad plan actually looks like, because collecting headlines is not the same as building a team. Look, this is where paper talk can become dangerous. A glamorous rumor can make ambition look alive before a club has done the hard part. Wages, fees, existing club positions, player intentions, and tactical fit all matter before anyone starts designing announcement graphics. Until more concrete reporting arrives, Rashford and Tonali to Spurs belongs in the monitor closely folder, not the done deal drawer. And finally, a different type of football conversation, the Wayne Rooney show. This one points toward Ghana, England, and Michael Essien talking belief, pain, and the kind of World Cup memory that never really leaves. The Wayne Rooney show. This is not a transfer update, so the value is not in pretending there is a hidden deal inside it. The key football angle is Ghana's belief before facing England, especially through Michael Essien's lens of World Cup hope and agony. England supporters should not treat Ghana as a decorative fixture on the schedule. The BBC Sport football listing for the Wayne Rooney show trails the question of why Ghana could shock England, with Essien on World Cup belief and agony. That is the concrete subject we have: Ghana's confidence, England's next test, and a former great speaking from experience rather than spreadsheet bravado. That detail matters because tournament psychology is not fluff. Ghana do not need to win the internet before kickoff, they need to believe England can be hurt in specific moments. For England, that connects neatly with Tuchel's defensive warning. If England drop too deep again or lose structure after turnovers, Ghana will not politely decline the space out of respect for the badge. There is also a human edge here. Essien's World Cup memories carry both pride and pain, and that combination usually makes analysis sharper, not softer. The Wayne Rooney show headline may sound like a program title more than a news event, but the underlying football point is serious. England's Ghana test is not just about attacking freedom, it is about whether England can control danger before it becomes a headline. That is the board tonight. Alvarez putting Atletico Madrid under pressure. Tottenham linked with Gakpo, while Bervgall reportedly looks for minutes at Tottenham Hotspur. Manchester City moving toward Maresca, while he is currently at Chelsea. Rodri's contract talks on hold. And the World Cup throwing up comebacks, doubles, delays, warnings, and dangerous calculations. The rule stays the same at Tablo Sports. Interest is not a deal, a warning is not a collapse, and the most important part of a football story is often the pressure hiding behind the headline.